believe I've ever met anyone quite like you.
I don't know who's weirder, you or me.
So good.
Did you ever see what a 44 Magnum pistol would do to a woman's face? I mean, it would fucking destroy it.
You're a funny guy. But looks aren't everything.
Give me the rest of the fucking bread.
Hey.
First of all, what'd you think of the ending?
I like how open-ended it is when he he drops Betsy off, and then he she's trying to get to talk to him a little bit more, it seems like, but he just sort of plays it cool and leaves. And then I like how they don't give you a shot of his face or any kind of, you don't get to see what he's doing or what his expression is when he's leaving. All you get is the interaction that Betsy gets, and then he's gone from the screen. Sort of like if, it's sort of what Betsy's perception is, I guess. I did like that part of the ending. And then what? So he gets better from being in the hospital miraculously because that shot to the neck didn't look good.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you think the ending is real or not real? Because that shot in the neck was pretty brutal.
He's like the town hero and he's dead in heaven. What are you implying?
I don't know. I think a lot of people think that all that happened after the shooting was just sort of a wish fulfillment. Like what would have been like the best thing that could have happened, when in reality, he got shot in the throat and he died, and the little girl, the little 12-year-old hooker, never went home to her family, maybe, and that girl Betsy never got in the back of his cab. He just got killed there, went to jail, or something.
It is a stark contrast from the rest of the movie, right? Like, what is
It
it trying to
is.
say? It's saying there's all this darkness in the city, and it's all, he complains about the filth of and the scum of society, and he keeps like he does all these things that fail. Like, what's this theme in the movie of him like kind of half-assing everything all the time, where he just sort of like, I'm gonna kill this. It seems like he wants to kill the politician guy, but it doesn't work out. So he's just like, I'll kill the pimps instead. And he seems really waffly for the whole movie.
Yeah.
It seems like things don't go well for him the whole movie. And then suddenly he follows through on something and things are perfect. Maybe that's the
Right.
idea.
They're miraculously perfect.
I didn't even really think of the possibility of it not being real. I guess I didn't really perceive any immediate cues that would indicate that.
Well, it was funny when we were watching it, and you were like, God, what are they going to do for the sequel?
Yeah. I thought he was dead.
Yeah, he might be dead. He might not be dead. I don't know. It depends how you interpret it.
Maybe it's just one of those classic misleads, or maybe it's supposed to. What would be the argument for it implying that it wasn't real, other than the fact that it's a mislead and different from the character of what's been happening through the rest of the movie? But that's a typical, dynamic character arc, right?
No, I think it's more nuanced clues. I don't think there's anything specifically, but like, I got shot in the throat pretty bad. The cops, I mean, what are the odds of the cops just letting you go after you essentially murder three people who weren't doing anything, even though they were pimps? They really weren't doing anything.
Maybe there's something about the, I mean, she's 12, so I guess, because I was trying to relate it to how this would go in reality. And yeah, my first instinct was like, oh, this guy would just go to jail for like walking up and just shooting all these people.
Right.
Even, even if you're trying to break up a pedophile prostitution ring or something like that, like you're still not supposed to just be a vigilante like that. So I can't imagine that just going over perfectly well. So yeah, I don't know. It does kind of seem like an unlikely ending, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think it's strict. I think he could be a hero. It's just that I don't know. It just seems too good to be true. He finally gets the respects he wants. The girl who doesn't love him anymore finally thinks he's a hero. The little kid he saved, or his parents like write to him about how great he is and how much of a hero he is. When in the context of the story, he's an anti-hero, but he leans more towards like a lost man and a psychopath, and you know, so it doesn't. I don't know. There seems to be a lot in the story to point towards that maybe it didn't happen and he just died there.
I do kind of like that interpretation where instead
Yeah,
of this like this story where he flails around for something to follows through on this thing, and then everything's great. That more, it's like, it's kind of like this guy had dreams of something nice and good things happening, and that would have been great. But really, what would happen in this situation is what the movie
right,
might be implying, right? Yeah.
right.
Okay.
But I also think even with that negative spin, I think there is still an interesting positive spin and interesting political message here because he sort of wanted to target this politician, not for any personal reasons, but almost because of his internal rage and wanting an outlet, which is that this politician who just speaks in boring platitudes. But so what would killing, like you said, what, Bush Epstein Clinton or something? What did you say
Yeah.
his name was?
George Free Bushstein.
Yeah, George W.
You get
Bushstein. So,
George
so,
Free.
so from a political sense, what would killing that guy have really done? I don't know. It would have been impactful and memorable, like other crazy killers throughout time, like John Hinckley, who kills Reagan. Not during this movie, obviously, it's a couple years later. But then you've got Oswald and other political assassins. But then he refocuses his anger, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, to save a little girl.
Yeah.
And like, so if he killed this politician, he'd be in the news and he'd be remembered, but who knows what that would have done. But instead, his life was basically forfeit. So he decided to just kill this pimp and all these evil gangsters. Maybe it traumatized Iris, maybe it didn't, but probably the only way to set her free from this life was to murder those evil people. So in terms of a political message, I don't know. It's interesting. It feels because the guy speaks. Though I love that scene where he's like, the buttons say they're supposed to say we are the people. The ones you gave us are we are the people. Do you see the difference? It's just like bullshit politics.
Yeah.
And this guy is just an insane.
And inaction or ineffectiveness that are being made here, but it is maybe the whole message would feel a little bit more intuitive if we were a little bit more in the culture of the times, and had that zeitgeist fresh of mind, because there might have been a general consensus at the time that like such vigilante hero work is not going to fix everything or something like that. Like maybe that's kind of a um, I wouldn't say like an actual element in the rhetoric of the time that would influence people's minds, but I just mean like there may have been a public understanding at the time that like, I don't know, you can't really do anything that has good outcomes about these types of negative elements in society, or that like we keep trying and we're struggling with making things better, seem to be making things worse. Maybe that's kind of part of the society's presumption at the time this movie was made that allows people to see that ending and say, oh, yeah, everything would just be great, wouldn't it? Or something like that. And maybe that are a little bit more clear. But it has this mystery to it where it's sort of like it seems pretty clear it's making complaints about the like seedy elements of society and the like ways the victims of it and how they're kind of like not defended, right? That seems to be one of the more clear themes.
Right.
And what else, what does it say we should do about it? Should we be vigilantes? Should we see how that would never, produce those good outcomes, or what?
Well, I think it's. I don't know if there's an exact prescription, but I think that Travis as a character, his life was forfeit anyway. He's like a disgruntled Vietnam veteran. He drives a cab at night. He's miserable. He eats bread and milk and peach schnapps and sugar for food. And he basically.
Maybe that's the part of the zeitgeist that I'm missing is the, being a Vietnam War veteran and trying to reintegrate into society. That's probably really important context for like who this character is and what his like life journey is. That's probably something I should have thought more of.
Yeah, well, but I also think that it's kind of great that the movie didn't even go into that because that would almost been a little cheap. He comes back from Vietnam and he's got PTSD and he's messed up. That's a small part of his character. In the reality of the movie, he's just a lost soul, God's lonely man. And I don't know if it prescribes vigilante justice to everybody, but this guy was sort of like his life was forfeit. He had no purpose, nowhere else to go, and I think he sacrificed himself to do real political action, which was to be a vigilante when nobody would have ever done anything. She would have continued to be a prostitute. If she tried to run away, this guy was obviously manipulative. So, his life was a sort of sacrifice, I think.
So the movie's saying like, look at this politician and his boring, empty platitudes, and maybe that should be your target. Well, that doesn't work. So you just got to go directly to the source of the problem and deal with it yourself. I guess that
Maybe, but again,
like you said, but just that this guy, he's trying to find some kind of value to generate, some way to receive love and praise, right?
right. Especially because he's not a bad person until he becomes a sort of like killer. But
He's a weird guy. He's like a really creepy guy,
yeah,
like for our times. That
right.
whole thing he keeps doing where he's like pulling the guns out and talking to himself in the mirror, like people don't like that.
No, you don't. We don't like that. But I love that scene where he seduces the girl and he thinks things are going to go well, and he just like has a social misunderstanding about what would be an appropriate date to take this girl to. And he takes this like really well dressed, probably college educated, politically oriented, high society woman to a porno theater, something that is just not going to fly.
That led him to be like that. That's probably what it was.
What?
Maybe it's his military experience that made him so brash and, unable to understand the sensibilities of the young adults who stayed behind for the war.
Maybe, yeah. That's also a possibility. Like some young, gorgeous blonde woman is going to have no conception of what it would be like to be fighting in Vietnam and be in the real political muck. Like she works in this political office. He's a really good candidate. He loves welfare. He's going to be a great president. She doesn't know anything about politics.
Mm.
Meanwhile, she's contrasted with this little 12-year-old prostitute who also speaks about politics. She's like, haven't you heard about women's lib? It's like, you're a 12-year-old prostitute. This isn't like the conversation to be having.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there's just an interesting contrast between the people of the political world who have no bearing on the politics of reality, and the poor, miserable people on the bottom who are junkies and pimps and prostitutes who are living in the political muck, and nobody's coming to help them. This guy, Charles Palantine, the people will rule. The people are not going to rule. This 12-year-old prostitute and these pimps aren't going to rule anything besides each other.
Yeah.
And so to take justice into your own hands and dispatch of them, as bad as it may be, it's a real political action. Not that I advocate it, but, and maybe even Travis, it's not like Travis said, I'm not going to kill this guy. I'm going to save this poor little girl. He sort of had this weird, like, he flaked out on killing the guy and then just ran away and then just decided, well, you're going to go kill somebody else anyway. I'm just going to kill somebody else. So
I guess that was to portray people's, like, searching for a target for their political rage.
Yeah, I think so.
Adults at the time, I'm sure, was searching around for, like, who are we supposed to target with this rage to complain about the way that society is. Like, you killed a politician who's not even elected yet, by the way.
Right.
That doesn't do anything. Even the one that is, it's just a revolving door of, these people paid by lobbyists, I guess, at this point. They weren't having that conversation, but they were just like, well, who do you target? And I guess, this guy wasn't looking for big time corruption. He was just, he doesn't like pimps, I guess. He doesn't like, child prostitution pimps.
As you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think it was just the easiest target of criminality because, throughout the movie, he's like sort of staring at these black pimps or the weird guy in the back of his cab was talking about what a 44 Magnum does to a woman's face.
Yeah. But let me ask you this. Do you think that this movie made in 1976 is supposed to be depicting Travis as like a creepy guy with some psychopathic tendencies, or just a guy who's angry about society and action is brewing up from under the surface? What's the desired depiction of this character at this time in 1976?
I think that maybe, I don't know if it's a cheap answer, but maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe you can't have one without the other, because it would just be cheap to say, oh, he's a real anti-hero he's a cab driver with a heart of gold, or he's a complete psychopath. Instead, he's able to he doesn't fit into society, so he's able to cut through the social norms and kill these people that are real oppressors. This politician talking about welfare and helping people and all that stuff, and we're not going to serve the few anymore. We the people rule. That's just, not to be able to take real political action like he did is something that a normal person can't do. You're socially conditioned. You don't want to get murdered. You don't want to get shot at. You don't want to commit violent acts against people. But he's a lost soul. It's over for him. His life is forfeit. So that's the only way somebody like a psychopath plus a man who's had enough is able to cut through everything and just do this act of rage that sort of, vindicates whatever feelings or political philosophy he had, or that the 70s is trying to represent. Because again, it was a tough time in the 70s. The economy is going downhill. At that time, New York City wasn't the Times Square full of M&M buildings and big billboards and fun chain restaurants. No, it was a seedy place full of porno theaters and child hookers and drug dealers. It was a seedy, bad place in the 70s. And so I think that there's a lot that has to do with being tired and fed up with that political climate, but also making a character who can fit in that political climate without it being preachy or strange or unrealistic, like a real guy.
Just so radical or performative that it's not relatable or something like that. Like he's just a guy who's, like you said, God's lonely man. I think they, like you said, I think they don't lean so hard into his veteran status because they want him to be more relatable, not so much of a caricature,
Right.
And I think they want to kind of portray. They want him to be a mirror for society's frustration with, like you said, what was wrong with New York and probably society to some extent. I guess the mid 70s were a time of a lot of criticism of the government. So there's just a lot of complaints in the public consciousness about society that I think they're trying to reflect with this character, and just trying to talk about, like, the different things that you might think of trying to different ways of addressing this. And what do you think about, is there any significance to the fact, I mean, I know there's like this, it makes it more elegant to have this continuity of him being involved with the campaign of this one guy, but is there anything that it's saying about him going to this political office and agreeing to do canvassing for this without knowing anything about politics? The whole fucking time he says he doesn't know anything about politics. Is that to keep things open-ended so that you appeal to both sides of the aisle in the audience, or what?
Well, I just think he likes the girl Betsy, and that was just an excuse to get in there. And, volunteering for that and having the political opinion, he is sort of shallow and non-committal on that because, he says he likes the guy, which is obviously kind of a lie to get to know her, but then he actually meets Charles Palantine at the back of his cab, and he tells everyone to vote for him. You're not really sure if that's true. He lies to his family and says he works for the government and he's doing some secret interesting job. So I think that he's more self-interested, and the political realities around him, I don't think he cares too much, or it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing about it, is that his passion doesn't have much direction,
Right.
He's got some anger about society, but it seems like he could almost take or leave whatever as long as he gets some kind of praise and love out of the deal or something. It seems like he's just, like he says, he's a lonely man, and it seems like he's just seeking, someone to want him and need him in their lives or something.
But he's also clearly bothered by the filth and the crime and this little girl being made a prostitute.
Yeah, he doesn't like that stuff.
So it's not that his political opinions would be as complex about, what's your opinion on the welfare policy? They're not complex like that. They're more visceral and intuitive. Like, he doesn't like seeing how gross the city is. He doesn't like seeing this 12-year-old girl being abused. He doesn't like this really hip pimp who looks like Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
Who's just really cool and got a weird, gross cocaine nail and just a hip, awesome guy, when Travis is just a goober.
Like that scene where he's dancing with the 12-year-old prostitute. He's kind of that scene's creepy and weird, and he looks nasty. I assume that's intentional, right? To make you be like, "Oh, this guy's a gross creep."
Right, but he's also has this. He's portraying himself as a soft, sensitive man, and you could almost fall into it in that scene because of the soft saxophone music and the low lights. And then you remember that he's this is a 12-year-old girl and he's some gross 30-year-old pimp with long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. To see that is to understand politics on a gut, visceral level and not a complex level is, I think, what people are missing. I mean, you drive around cities today, it's the same problem. Homeless people everywhere, open crime, just things are so bad, and you have so many people trying to intellectualize the problems we have when they're so clearly in your face. No, we can't have the homeless encampment in front of the elementary school. But then you have like a debate with like, well, actually, it's okay if it's 500 feet or 100 feet, or we need to keep these people like it's complete nonsense. And I'm not a vigilante, so I'm not going to go murder people. But at the same time, the frustrations are on a gut level. They're not mental, it seems like. At least
Yeah.
from Travis's sort of everyman perspective, he seems to have thoughts about what's going on, but they're not more complex than the horrible feeling it gives you to see the innocence corrupted.
Yeah, they got New York City cleaned up after a while, for a little while anyway, huh?
It did, and now it's back to the trash and the feces on the street. I mean, just last week, a crazy guy assaulted two girls.
Yeah.
The girl, they both didn't want to call the police and get him arrested because it'd be racist. And then the very next week, that same guy pushed an old man down the subway stairs and killed him
Damn.
and went to jail. So it's like, the city is bad now. Every city, Seattle, Portland, but like talking about especially New York, just looks bad.
I'm not sure why people aren't voting for institutionalization of people with, addiction and mental issues and all the things that make them too irresponsible to be law abiding and housed. I mean, not every homeless person is going to be some you know person who needs institutionalization, but the vast majority of them do. There's just nothing else to do with these people. I've
Right.
tried a lot of different things. I've given them jobs and housing and stuff, and it doesn't work out. You can't help them change their just self-destructive behavior. Just offering them rehab services and housing and all these resources, you can spend an infinite amount of money, and the homelessness problem won't change at all if there's no enforcement and institutionalization. For most of these people, they just can't do anything other than what they're doing without
Yeah.
force.
Well, the jails are full, the asylums are closed down, the political will to vote on anything is just, up in the air. There's really no solution. I'm not saying you should go Travis Bickle style and kill all the homeless people, but it's tough without the asylums and stuff open and with the jails full. They've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people are voting for this, right? They voted to shut the asylums down, and we just never brought them back, and we've just gotten more and more lenient on things because what? We just don't have prison capacity? That seems weird. This country seems like a place. I mean, we do have a huge amount of prisoners per capita. I think it's like the most in the world or something, um but I don't know. This seems like a country that would easily have enough prison space, right?
Well, I think that they,
Dollars is the problem, maybe.
well, like I don't think judges are prosecuting. They don't want to put these people in jail. But even if they did, I feel like the prison space is it actually, the mainstream news will tell you that they need to stop building prisons and don't have private prisons. But I think the reality is we might need more prisons because you look at a place like Rikers Island, or which is in New York, or like the Two Towers Correctional Facility in Los Angeles, and the places are filled to the brim with people. There's shit on the walls. The conditions are horrible. The criminals run the asylum essentially. Like they are stuffed to capacity. So what happens when you have people who are saying, "Oh, we can't build any more prisons," plus, "Oh, we can't prosecute criminals," but even if you do prosecute criminals, they should be out quicker. But that just makes it more criminals. So, what can you do? It's a cycle of making more criminals and making less prisons and shutting down the asylums, which are places really disturbed people would go. But since those are gone, they have to go to the prison, but the prisons are full of violent criminals. And then you could say, oh, well, release the people with drug offenses. But
Interest group directly and quickly would benefit from such a situation. Like, I mean, it seems like it would be out of the interest of private prison enterprises. I guess it's just all of these programs that are like, I mean, if you don't have a prison to run as a business for these people, then you have all of these, like welfare and assistance programs that's the business you run. I suppose they've got a racket one way or another. There's a bunch of taxpayer dollars that go towards homeless people, and they just kind of give them food and housing opportunities and stuff, and blow the rest on salaries and executive bonuses or something.
pretty much, I mean, the like LA homeless housing, whatever, they just have tons of people on the board. They spend billions every year. People get nice, cushy salaries and jobs. Meanwhile, the homeless, you can't help them with money. They don't need money. They need to be locked in a cage and detox, or put in an asylum because they've lost their marbles. They need to be given like psychiatric medication. And so if you need to build more prisons, you need to build more prisons. But there's obviously a political wave in this country. They say, oh, they're building all these private prisons. They're so evil. The prison industrial complex. There are prisoners all over the street. There are criminals all over the streets.
Yeah.
Who would, like, you would, if the prison industrial complex was so evil and like runs our country secretly, wouldn't they be locking all these people up? Isn't that how they make money?
I mean, I guess they must just be making money off of the, free needle program or something.
free bent crack spoon within a free lighter.
They're just getting the government pays like $600 per crack spoon.
Yeah, exactly. Just pay way too much. Just one guy in the factory just taking a metal spoon and just bending it. $600. Bend it. $600.
Man, that is a racket. They're custom.
Oh yeah. No, you want to hear about a racket? In Los Angeles, they did this program where they spent, I don't know how much, millions of dollars on to give prisoners in LA County jails iPads, because they thought it would be better to rehabilitate them and help them. Well, the cost per iPad is $2,000.
Oh wow!
iPads don't cost $2,000?
No, what do they cost? Like the newer model would be
Like $800. Yeah, maybe $1,200. The cheapest one, $300. So the LA's paying. And so I read this story about a guy who went to jail for like statutory rape or like trying to solicit a minor for sex or something. And so then he got this iPad and he just started harassing the girl that he raped from inside the prison and sexting minors with the iPad they gave him.
So idiotic.
It's crazy. It's just a crazy story.
iPads for anybody besides people who are in the military or like surgeons or something. If the government even employs any, they should stop for iPads.
No, it's got to go to prisoners. They need it.
No more iPad schools or prisons. That's what I would think.
The government thinks like, oh well, if we just give these violent sex criminals iPads, we'll be just like Norway. They're so kind to their prisoners, and these guys are just like, I'm going to use this to sex minors. It's crazy.
Pretty insane.
It's just crazy to think about. So to wrap it back to Taxi Driver,
Society doesn't give you options to fairly or reasonably navigate these types of problems. Like that's what the whole, myth of democracy is supposed to be about. Like when you learn about it, you're like, oh, so you can, like, everybody can come together and constantly talk about issues that they have, and no matter how the world evolves or no matter how those issues change or get addressed, or the pendulum swings in another direction, you always just talk and vote and figure it out, right? Well, there is no mechanism of dealing with, like, I mean, sure, like there's voting to do and there's like debates and political action going on, but the lobbyists that sort of basically kind of fund the parties, because it's like a Democrat or Republican who ends up taking a seat of power in a meaningful way. Um, the lobbyists basically get the parties to find somebody who's going to play ball with some of the paid for um, political agenda items, and then that guy is going to be the endorsed candidate, is basically how it seems to run.
yeah,
So outside of voting for one paid for candidate or the other paid for candidate, um, it seems like you don't really get an option about how to address any of these issues. So sure, you debate about these issues and you vote with some kind of intention about these issues, but that doesn't mean that there's really a lot of control in where society's actually going to go. It seems like your options are pared down quite a bit. And if you have some kind of issue with a chronic problem in society that goes on for decades and decades, then um, that just must be what the lobbyists want, I guess. That's why I'm wondering who's, there must be some kind of homelessness program, uh, like corporate servicers or maybe even nonprofit servicers who just find ways to move money into enough of the right people's hands or something. There's just some kind of scheme about getting government money for homelessness services, I suppose, right?
yeah.
Keep it around for that reason at least.
And it's funny that when you bring up democracy, because I feel like you can tie it back to the asylum, closing the asylums, where, in the 70s, the economy was in a slump. They had something called like stagflation, where I think I don't remember what it is. It's something like inflation goes up, but wages go down. And so you get locked in like a bad economic spiral. And then, so they voted in Ronald Reagan to try to fix this problem, which for all intents and purposes he did. But I don't think Ronald Reagan ran on the platform of we're going to close the asylums.
Right.
No, he ran on the platform of we're going to, get the economy back on track. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But what happened was mass deregulation, which just ended up closing the asylums. You'd think that maybe they'd open more asylums or something, but really they just closed down the ones they had, maybe to save their state
Tax,
run.
like, paid for
Yeah,
that. It's all tax money.
right. So they were shut down, and so nobody voted to close the asylums down. It's just what happened when you voted for this guy. So there you go. Democracy manifest.
Yeah.
Your good intentions come back to bite
Government
you.
social programs. I mean, they're talking about needing to cut things more and more. They're trying to increase the age of Social Security. If they haven't already done that, did they already do that? I think they did.
I don't know. Maybe a little bit, but they want to push it into this. It's in your 60s now, right? They want to push it into your 70s, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And
Which,
they need to cut, welfare and entitlement programs in half and all this stuff. I mean, the debt situation for the dollar looks pretty dire, and they talk about it being pretty dire. I don't know. I don't think it's really savable in the long term. I just think that you don't want, the Western elite, or the Western elite don't want the Western elite hegemony to collapse with the dollar. The dollar has to pass its, like, reins of the international financial system off onto whatever digital uh, currency marketplace is going to take its place as like the
Right.
financial control infrastructure of the global Western elite. You don't want it to
Right.
just collapse due to forces that you're not fully in control of. You need to have some kind of replacement. You need to be in a position where your next financial infrastructure is saying, "Hi, I'm replacing the old system," by the time the dollar crumbles.
So it's going to collapse, but they need to stave off that collapse as long as possible to transition into a new sort of currency, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what that transition entails, but it seems like it's about moving, um, like getting a bunch of money to move between asset classes. I mean, it seems like investment in Bitcoin has to do with, um, part of this transition into trying to soften the blow of like the dollar's degeneration because of its
Sure,
debt. And you have to somehow like I think the reason it's a drawn out process is this is it's like you've got what you're trying to move is like the consumer's sense of stability and goodwill, and like this system's not going to crash, or at least not more than the alternatives. It's like how are you going to get your transactions done in a situation when the dollar is hyperinflating, or like people don't value it, like people in really high places moving very large amounts of money don't trust the dollar, because if it's like at some point it'll default. The debt situation is just going to keep getting worse, is what the story is, I guess. So at some point, the dollar is going to what hyperinflate would be the classical thing for it to do. I think they'll kind of put it on life support somehow, and like detach it and like make it kind of a welfare currency within the nation, while some other market of digital currencies takes over some of the international market and like big time financial transaction servicing market. But I think to get around to the whole point of this like long transition with the dollar, like not letting it die and moving into something else immediately, is because somehow you've got to transfer the goodwill into another system. So like you can't let the dollar die until you control a competitive infrastructure that also has aspects that make people need it. Like it's I mean, the United States uses its military to make people need the dollar. We literally force people to buy oil in dollars, and then
right.
we have mechanisms of making people need the dollar that literally are just like a gun. But we need something that will make people use the next thing, which is what, like cybersecurity. We need to have some kind of crypto coin that will survive a future cyber attack on the banking system or something, maybe back up a bunch of like wealth and debt data into some kind of new blockchain based currency ledger that allows people to like uh, have a system of accounting for wealth that is no longer in the traditional banking. Like, how your bank is the one keeping track of how many dollars you have. Like, you don't keep track of that all the time. The bank's
Right.
software does it. And if that just crashed, like, you wouldn't really know what you owe and what you have and stuff like that.
Sure.
Maybe the idea is in the future at some point you copy that ledger of what everybody owns and what everybody owes, and you put that into some cryptocurrency thing and delete the other one, and then just say, haha, whoops, if you want society to not totally reset, just use this other system. And it's all encrypted, so you can't fuck with it. We're the only ones with the keys. Maybe that's the idea.
Yeah. Well, and what are you gonna do to oppose that? And if you have tens of thousands of dollars and the government's just like, oh, Chase Bank is no more dollars. We're on America Coin, and download the app. Otherwise, you don't get any of your money. What are you going to do? You're not going to do anything. You just have to do what they want, basically. Unless you are stockpiling resources other than dollars, then it's
That's why I would think that the cryptocurrency that's going to be, um, you know, increasing in value in this, hypothetical future of kind of replacing the dollar with something that, uh, you keep a ledger of what everybody has and what everybody owes, but there's something fundamentally structurally different about it that kind of like restabilizes it against its debt scenario somehow. I don't know. Like, I really wouldn't know what to come up with as far as how this would work. It'd probably just be some kind of sly redistribution of wealth from people who are owed to the people who owe a bunch of money somehow. And so I don't know, like China's going to buy all these U.S. dollar treasuries as part of this new deal that they just struck. Isn't that part of it, that they're going to like keep buying a bunch of U.S. treasuries? And our eventual
Yeah, but
plan
that's always
is,
been the case.
huh?
That's always been the case. They are,
Yeah, and so our plan would eventually have to be to weaken those treasury shares against whatever this new crypto option will be. Otherwise, there's just nothing happening to the debt, right? Like if you're trying to keep a
right.
ledger of debts and wealth, you have to like warp the part of it that's making you structurally unstable because of your debt interest payments. Like you have to change somebody's holdings or the value of somebody's money somehow. And I suppose maybe the mechanism of that is just who gets on the boat too late and who gets on early. What makes Bitcoin so secure? I mean, why wouldn't Peter Thiel just make his own cryptocurrency and force everybody to use it under threat of leaking their nudes or something, or whatever Palantir has access to?
I think that currencies and stuff are my weakest area of knowledge, but I think my understanding about Bitcoin is it's on the blockchain, so it has that big ledger, so there's transparency, right? So you can follow the crypto key or whatever and know where all the money is. And then everybody has a faith in it because it's a thing now. Right, like people have an inherent faith in Bitcoin because it was sort of the first big cryptocurrency.
I mean, it is kind of yeah, getting into a place where it's posed against the dollar as like, hey, I could be an alternative, if everything
Right.
falls apart. And
But
that is a way that people are getting on early and making great wealth by simply, being there first. So maybe,
the problem is it started off with people buying pizza with it, but now there's no way people are going to spend it on pizza. Even though I guess people spend dollars on pizza, but one Bitcoin is worth like what, $80,000. So
right.
you're not going to spend one Bitcoin on a pizza. You could spend a 1/80,000th Bitcoin on a pizza. So
Maybe
that
maybe
could
you
be a thing.
maybe do your normal transactions in Dogecoin, and Bitcoin's more of a savings account thing.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I have to learn more about
What
currency.
cryptocurrency would be safe to get into? That's the thing, is it's like it is just this um, encrypted ledger of transactions and holdings, right? Like, can't you just make one of those with any name under anybody's ownership? I mean, Bitcoin is run on just anybody's servers, I guess, who wants to mine it. So it's just like I don't really know how it exists structurally outside of those mining servers, or like how is there always going to be miners? Like, does it disappear and get deleted if nobody's mining anymore? Like, where does this thing live? I don't know. I've got a lot of questions about how
Mm,
to cryptocurrency as a hedge for the future.
I thought it lived on the ledger. So like if you
Yeah,
have
with
Bitcoin, you have I don't know. Like if you have access to Bitcoin, then you have access to the ledger, and so you
well, it's
have
just computer's computer, right? That they're like processing the changes to it. But what does it just perpetually pay Amazon Web Services to sit on those servers, or
I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's
But
look that up.
anyway, Yeah, there's just there's a lot of issues with society that you don't have a good, clear direction to address your complaints at. Politicians aren't really going to help you out
Right.
that much. Sure, they're different than their counterparts to some degree, but there's just types of change that the normal people are locked out of really achieving outside of this guy's, Travis's type of vigilante work. I mean, I guess that seems like it turned out good if that ending's real, if he didn't just die and go to heaven.
Well, I think it turned out good in both scenarios. One scenario, he gets a hero-like ending. The other scenario, he sacrificed himself to free this girl from the clutches of these pimps against her own will. Because she doesn't really know any better. She's maybe traumatized for life now, but she was getting raped by multiple men all the time. So, I don't know. It's really tough. People who traffic children probably should be killed, but
for him.
I'm not going to do it because I'm not an insane guy like Travis. I don't have the I don't have the moxie,
You don't have the cash to buy all those guns.
That's also a good point. Those are some cheap guns, though.
Make that, that cabinet gun.
Just take apart one of my drawers in the kitchen and just like. My mom's like, "What the fuck did you do to the kitchen?" It's like, "Oh, I'm making a slide rail gun to dole out justice on the streets."
You had a hard time using the butter knife to unscrew the thing, so you really had to pry on it, and it broke apart the whole drawers.
Yeah. Just sitting there eating my bowl of bread and milk and peach schnapps and sugar.
Do that sometime in front of somebody, see what they say.
What, just like take a... Oh, yeah. Well, what I thought was interesting, too? When the little girl Iris is making toast with jam, but then just pours a bunch of sugar on top of it.
He's putting too much sugar on everything in this
It was the 70s.
Jam already is sugar.
It was the 70s. I think that people in the 70s just put sugar on tons of stuff without thinking about it.
Really?
I think so.
It was implying, because nobody didn't seem weird to anybody in the movie.
Yeah.
What about the white bread in milk thing, though? That must have...
I think that was just gross.
Was a destitute, like, this man has nothing. Just a lonely man. Kind of.
Well, but the weird thing is he obviously had money, like they demonstrated multiple times throughout the film, but he was just like, destitute spiritually almost, eating a bowl of milk and bread with sugar.
War.
Yeah, the war just fucked him up. Poor Travis.
Yeah. Poor Travis.
I think you're a lonely person. I drive by this place a lot, and I see you here. I see a lot of people around you, and I see all these phones and all this stuff on your desk, and it means nothing.